Evening, and today's presentation is moving on from the previous presentation and is part one of a series covering how to achieve the lifestyle needed to improve one's health through what we eat. So, as always, and also for Brenda's knowledge, I'm a civil engineer, retired. I'm not a medical professional. But I've done an awful lot of research over the last 4 or 5 years on health and diet. Now, I was never diabetic myself, but I did have other issues which diet has resolved. So, as always, this presentation is for information only. It's not medical advice. And I have to say, please discuss any dietary changes with your doctor, especially if you're on medications to lower blood glucose or blood pressure. And if on medications for type 2 diabetes, these practical guides can be passed to your doctor. The BJGP guide is available on the Diabetes Thanet website, and I've started including some links which can be sent to your doctor as well. So last time you saw, well, not the one on the thyroid, but the one when we were talking about health and diet. You saw this: avoid sugar, refined grains, seed oils, and spreads. And the seed oils and spreads, they're called that, but they're called vegetable oils. But that's not what their name implies. And they're not made of vegetables. I'll say a bit more about this later. So just eat real food, but first prioritize protein, control your carbs, though this should be done within your own tolerance for carbs, and different people will have different tolerances. And stop fearing fat, at least good, natural, unprocessed fats. Fresh food is what you need: meat, fish, eggs, fresh veg that will fulfill all your nutritional needs without introducing any harmful foods into your diet. For myself, I don't include any white foods such as rice or potatoes under fresh veg. I'll also say that there's a growing number who are thriving on either none or very little veg and fruit at all. Of course, the Eskimos and others living in the far north latitudes have done so for a long time without getting modern chronic diseases. They don't get scurvy from vitamin D deficiency, and nor do they have any problems from not eating any fiber either. So avoid processed food is one message I'm giving out. Sugar, refined grains, and seed oils are the primary ingredients in much of the processed food. And according to the British Medical Journal, processed foods are defined as formulations of food substances, often modified by chemical processes and then assembled into ready-to-consume hyperpalatable food and drink products using flavors, colors, emulsifiers, and other cosmetic additives. And again, I've included the link if anyone wants to look that up. So, and these are some of the processed foods that are eaten, and I have to say, they can be very enjoyable as well. The juices, snacks, cereals, bread. Yep. Again, avoid the processed food. So if it comes in a brightly designed packet, has a long list of ingredients, some of which you don't really know what they are, has a best before date, which is sometime in the future. Sometimes it can be years in the future even, and has instructions on how many minutes it should take to microwave. And also, if the label says it's one of your 5 a day, it's healthy or heart healthy, lowest cholesterol, it's low fat, it's sugar-free, it's natural, it's no artificial colors, it's gluten-free, multigrain, fortified, or high fiber. It's all just marketing for processed food. Now, you won't see an egg with a label like this on it, and that's because eggs are real food. So we can get rid of that. So let's look at protein and prioritizing protein and how much do we eat. These are the NHS recommended reference intakes for protein, fat and carbs. I'll focus on the protein intake, which is just 50 grams per day per adult. They say it's neither an upper or a lower limit, and it equates to just 10% of a 2,000 calorie diet. I tried to find out how much we actually eat, and there is a Public Health England spreadsheet which gives these figures. And when I calculated the energy consumption in calories, it only came to 1,790. And I'm going to say, if that were true, we wouldn't have an obesity crisis. But let's assume that the actual percentages are correct, which means that we're getting about 15% of calories from protein. Now, the University of Sheffield says that more than half older people don't consume enough protein to stay healthy. So why prioritize protein? So two researchers from Australia, David Raubenheimer and Stephen Simpson, they've studied protein and the impact on diet in insects and animals and also humans. And a major conclusion that they have is that if you have a diet that is low in protein relative to fats and carbohydrates, you will overeat fats and carbohydrates to meet your protein target, risking obesity. And there's more on this subject. I'll just read this one out. Protein is essential to the body's, protein is your body's essential building block. And generally speaking, most people don't eat enough protein. Also, as we age, we need more protein. Notably, protein has a much lower impact on blood sugar and insulin levels than carbohydrates. Now, I discovered this after I'd given my presentation on the thyroid function, but protein improves thyroid function and the conversion of T4 to T3. So that's interesting. So again, why prioritize protein? This is a very good video from the diet doctor, well worth watching. But protein increases your satiety, and therefore it helps with weight loss. You lose fat, but it maintains and builds muscle, maintains bone health as we age, combats insulin resistance, which is needed if you have diabetes or pre-diabetes. And high protein diets provide the nutrients that we need. Lower protein diets can mean lower nutrients.
Jeremy, does it improve one's immune system?
I can't answer that, Brian. I don't know, but I would expect that it does, because generally you're just going to be more healthy if you have adequate protein. Yeah, I'd have to look that up though. Yeah.
Right, thanks for that.
So how much protein should we eat? If you remember, the NHS recommended 50 grams per day. This table comes from the diet doctor, and again, I've left a link down below which people could access it. So for women, for most women, not the very tall women, it's about 90 to 100 grams per day, and for men, it's about 110 to 140 grams per day. But it may be easier to think of this in terms of how much protein you should get at each meal. So 30 to 40 grams for women and 35 to 50 grams for men. And that's 2 to 3 times what the NHS is recommending. So you're wondering, well, what's the equivalent of 30 grams in terms of food, 30 grams of protein? So a reasonable steak or chicken or 4 eggs or your normal piece of salmon that you might have, they all have sort of about 30 grams of protein. So if you're doing an omelette, use 4 eggs, which is what I do. There's also cheese that one can use, dairy and milk. But of course, milk also has carbs in, so one has, and some people are lactose intolerant. So slight caution with milk. And veg, you have to eat quite a lot of veg to get your 30 grams of protein if you're just eating veg at a meal. But it has a relatively good protein to energy ratio in veg. So let's move on to controlling carbs. Why control carbs? Now, I found this No Diabetes website, which is promoted by the NHS Clinical Commissioning Group from Northwest London. It's the first NHS website which I've seen which promotes low carb eating. Hopefully there'll be more of them. So it's, again, worth having a look at on this one. So again, why control carbs? Now, these 2 charts are from Adam Brown. He's the author of Bright Spots and Landmines, and he runs a website called diatribe.com. And Bradley, you sent a short link from something from that website to all of us the other day. But let's just have, you can see on the low carb day, it's pretty much within the limits of his blood glucose. And on the high carb day, but let's just have a closer look at the high carb day. Now, you would have had breakfast at around 8 a.m. And that would have led to a blood glucose high around 10 a.m. I've been trying to read this off the graph there. And then it comes down to a crash, which goes well below the, so he's having a small hypo there around 12 p.m. So about 4 hours or so, 3-4 hours after you've eaten a high carb meal, you'll probably have a sort of low blood glucose event, which would leave you feeling weak and a bit fuzzy. I know I used to have these because I used to have high carb breakfasts, but back then I didn't know why. So just moving on to what is high carb, what foods are high carb. These infographics are on the Public Health Collaboration website, and you can see that things like rice and breads and breakfast cereals, they're equivalent in 4 teaspoons of table sugars, are very high. So this is what happens in your blood glucose when you have a bowl of rice. It's equivalent to having a lot of sugar. And then right down at the bottom, you can see eggs and essentially broccoli right down there, which has also minimal impact on your blood sugars. And there's 7 of these, and you can look them up again on the PHC website. This avoid refined grains and sugars, especially at breakfast time, because you need to control your carbs. So this used to be, I'm guessing a lot of people would have a breakfast like this. I used to have a breakfast like this. Glass of orange juice, bowl of cereal, a banana, maybe a piece of toast as well with jam. So that's about 95 carbs and only 15 grams of protein, half of what I feel, or what the diet doctor feels that one should be getting. But if you prioritize your protein and just go for bacon and eggs, you're getting 1 gram of carbs in that, and you're getting all the protein you need. That will leave you feeling full until really it's your next meal time, and it won't give you any highs and lows of blood sugars. So getting on to the last part about fats. Don't fear fats, but don't fear natural fats. This statement comes from the Insulin IQ website, which there's a professor called Ben Bickman, who I've mentioned before to you probably. So healthy fats, and particularly saturated fats, are the foundation for hormone production, vitamin and nutrient absorption, and building cell membranes. We need these essential fatty acids because our bodies can't produce them. Essential fatty acids also contribute to brain development, blood clotting, and also inflammatory control. So essential fatty acids are just fats that we must eat for our development and survival. We don't eat them, we get sick. And the best sources of these fats are from animal-based foods. That's a whole topic for another presentation as well. So do fear processed fats. I would recommend, if someone wants a deeper dive into it, watching this video from this chap called Chris Kenobi. He does pronounce his name Kenobi, as in Obi-Wan. Yeah, it's a real eye-opener to watch this. And he makes a very good argument that vegetable oils are a primary factor, perhaps the primary factor, in much of our modern chronic diseases. But we're still told to use polyunsaturated fat in vegetable oils and avoid saturated fat from animals. And also this book, The Big Fat Surprise, by Nina Teicholz. She's a journalist who's done an awful lot of work over the last 10, 15 years on this subject. So getting on to just eat real food. This is going back to the No Diabetes website. I just pulled this table out and this picture out from it. And they say eat more of eggs, etc., and eat less of toast, etc. In their picture, though, they mention tofu. I would avoid tofu because almost all tofu, 95% of all the world's tofu, is genetically modified. They've also got some red beans in there, red kidney beans. Half a dozen of red kidney beans raw will make you extremely ill. They are poisonous, raw. They're toxic. You eat all that pile of red beans, well, you probably wouldn't live. One has to be cautious of seeing a picture like that. So in summary, you will overeat carbs and fat if you don't get enough protein. adequate protein is really the key to satiety. So you control your carbs, but keep to your own personal preference. For some people, only having 20 grams of carbs a day is the limit they can have. Otherwise, their diabetes can spin out of control. For others, it can be sort of 50 to 100 grams of carbs a day, but it's all within personal tolerance. And don't fear natural fats. Avoid processed seed oils and spreads. And lastly, it's not your fault. Insulin resistance is the most common but unrecognized health problem worldwide. And that's staying from Professor Ben Bickman. He is probably absolutely right. Nobody really recognizes this. So thank you. Possibly next we could go on to other things, but that's for discussion. I think I'd like to discuss all of these with Brian before the next meeting. So we can just go back to that one. Thank you.